I'm in Zurich, Switzerland. I'm going to do a 10-hour random walk, but that bell means that it's 10 a.m, so I gotta go, go, go. Okay, so basically I'm going to throw dice at every intersection to decide in what direction I go next. So if it's even, I'm going to go there. If it's odd, I'm going to go there. No. And it's in 2, so I'm going to go there. This is the university building where I'm starting because it has a good view. And today is really good weather. I had to abort my try last week because it was raining. Okay, now this is my first intersection. With the 1 and 2, I'm going to go there. With the 3 or 4, I'm going to go there. And with the 5 or 6, I'm going to go there. So let's see. 3. Okay, so that way. Okay, so this is probably a good moment to explain why I'm doing this. Basically, I thought it would be fun to see where I would end up after 10 hours of walking randomly. And I want you to guess how far I will go, meaning the straight line distance from start to end after 10 hours. I can already spell that I walked approximately 34 kilometers during those 10 hours. Does that mean that I will end up 10 kilometers away from where I started? Maybe 5? Maybe I will end up exactly where I started. I think this video is so much more fun if you write down your guess right now, maybe in the comments or on a piece of paper, and then at the end see how good you are. But okay, let's get back to the walk. Okay, now we get to another part of intersection. It's even, so I gotta go there. And the only real rule I have is that I can't go back immediately to make it a little bit less likely to go in circles. This is kind of pretty. Even, odd, so I go there. This is kind of a nice thing. I think there's a Tom Scott video about these. Oh, 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 oh. Wow. Okay, so while walking Noel continues wandering in circles, I want to give you a little bit of a hint of how random walks usually go. And for that, let's simplify the concept massively. Let's say you start at the number 0, and at every step, you, instead of choosing an intersection, you either add or subtract 1. But these very simple rules already lead to some interesting behavior. So I just simulated 100 steps, but I ended up at number 3, which kind of raises the question for me of where we end up on average. Well, we could do the calculations, which actually get quite ugly, or we could just simulate it a million times and see where we end up. And here's the resulting distribution, which looks normal. And clearly, it seems that we're most likely to end up in the middle and definitely not at an odd number, which makes sense because an even number of steps always gets you to an even number. If we ever ask for the absolute distance to the center, meaning the amount of steps it would take to get from our endpoint back to the center at 0, it gets a little more complicated. In fact, fun fact, this average distance converges to the square root of 2n divided by pi, where n is the number of steps, which is ridiculous. So roughly speaking, you end up at something like square root of n times some constant, which just happens to involve pi for some normal reason. But before I explain why pi is here for 2 hours, let's wander back to Wandering Noel. Okay, updates. We're about 5.5 hours in. Definitely been going in circles a lot. My feet hurt quite a lot. In general, I think weather is quite good. It's quite warm, but not too warm. And yeah, I think I'm going strong. Eight hours and 41 minutes. I have thankfully been joined by friends every so often, which is very fun and very nice. Thank you. I am super tired. We just came up this very, very annoying street, and now I need to decide if I go there, which is okay. If I go there, which is, I do not want to go up there because my legs hurt and we already came down there and it was really, really tiring. Or go there, which is also pretty tiring. Or if I go there. So I'm going to label it 1, 2, 3, 4. Please, 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 not a 2. 1! Yes! Okay. Okay, so before I get to the end of my walk, let's quickly do some analysis. Before I talked about the one-dimensional random walk, but actually the real-life version is in 2 dimensions, which doesn't change a lot in itself, but measuring the distance in 2 dimensions is actually a little bit more complicated, which kind of makes the calculations a little bit more ugly. And even whereas the graph I'm walking on, namely Zurich streets, is actually really complicated and full of weird corners and intersections, which makes it really hard to model it mathematically. So I didn't model it mathematically, I just simulated a million random walks and did some pretty graphs. And this is, according to my simulations at least, the distribution of final distances to the start. This doesn't seem to follow a normal distribution, but rather a so-called Rayleigh distribution. I also made this interactive heat map of the simulated endpoints. You can see that according to my simulations, Zurich has a very non-uniform network, which makes sense because Zurich's topography and lakes split the area into kind of focused sections. According to this data, the average final distance is 1,355 meters. So let's finally see where I actually ended up. It's the last 5 minutes, probably one of the last intersections. Even and odd. Let's roll the dice. Odd, meaning there. Okay, time is running out. There's 30 more seconds, so that was probably the last intersection. I'm frankly ready to go to bed. And oh wow! Oh, that's really cool. We're above the Deuterbahn. This is like a fun funicular. Maybe we can see it come through actually. I think this is probably a good place to stop. Yeah, it's been 10 hours. I know maths. That's a really, 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 really nice view. Okay, so I ended up 1,620 meters from the start. If you got that right, I'm really impressed. I actually tracked my walk using Strava to collect some GPS data. But Strava gave me super bad GPS data, as Strava claimed that I walked 53 kilometers, which I firstly happily shared with all my friends, and they were all thoroughly impressed. Unfortunately, later when I retraced the path manually to do some analysis, because again the GPS data was so bad, I found that the actual path was only 33.5 kilometers in length, which I guess also makes more sense. But is also less impressive. So here come 4 amazing diagrams that describe my random walk. And this first one is the distance to the start over time. You can see that in the first 2 hours I got actually really far, but then I just started walking in circles. In fact, I remember getting really scared after those 2 hours because I thought I would end up really far, because if you think about it, at that point it was as if I started a random walk at that point. So I basically had a 50-50 chance of if I'd go even further or if I'd end up more close to the start. Which also had the nice side effect of my friends being able to visit me on the walk without having to pay for a really expensive Swiss train ticket, which was nice. Here comes the second diagram. This is the elevation meter over time, because guess what? Zurich is actually quite a hilly city, and the topography means that you have to climb a lot. I think I had an elevation gain of about 700 meters at the end. There was this one ascent called the Heuerstieg, which roughly translates to crying stairs, and it just went up quite a lot, and I got super unlucky and had to walk it multiple times. And I thought the name was just really fitting. And here comes the third diagram. Well, this is kind of cheating. This is just the longitude and latitude over time. But actually, you can animate this. I found this pretty cool website which takes Google Street View imagery and puts it into a video. So here is the animated version of my walk. Which is very messy, but I think it's kind of cool. And this is the fourth diagram. This is the walking speed over time. As you can see, I started off really excited and strong, but then I got kind of slow towards the end. On that topic, I also had to get home after my walk. Needless to say, I took the train